the 80s and 90s while he was a tennis photographer, a sports photographer. So some of the iconic pictures from the 80s and 90s of, Wimbledon and the US Open and all that kind of stuff would almost definitely have been taken by Mel. Now, the reason why I include him is there's a lot of stuff of his on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and just type in Mel DiGiacomo, you'll find some B&H videos, especially, they're a couple of hours long, and they're really interesting. You get a really good idea of this idea of documentary photography that we're going to talk a lot about today as well, obviously. So yeah, very good. And then James Ravilius, who was nothing to do with weddings, but it was his black and white work really that inspired me right at the beginning. And his story was that he was living in London and moved to Devon, which is a county in the southwest of England, with his wife. Moved to a very small village, again in the late 80s, early 90s. And he just decided to document everything around him. And I think that's really important, this idea of just taking pictures of everything and everybody. It's more difficult now, of course, because people are more wary of cameras and privacy and all of those kind of things. But actually, the way that James approaches things, he did approach it, unfortunately, he's no longer with us, was in this very beautiful, humanity-based way. So even some of the characters that you might think might not necessarily take a good picture, he's managed to, create these very wonderful environmental kind of portraits of them. And it's really beautiful, beautiful black and whites. So briefly, my story was back in 2008. I was nothing to do with photography. I worked in London, and much like lots of people in the industry, I suppose I got burnt out. I was doing a 5-hour commute every day, 2.5 hours each way, back and forth from the west of England, where I live now, and London. And I just knew that something had to change, but I wasn't sure what I could do. I'd never owned a camera, didn't have a camera. And one day I was sat on a train and I picked up a magazine, and there was an article in there which had some beautiful documentary wedding photos in them. And I had, no inclination of spending my Saturdays at weddings. But I looked at these pictures and I thought, wow, these are amazing. So took the magazine home to my wife and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be a wedding photographer. And she kind of laughed a little bit until she realized I was serious. Bought a camera, and then I went and I've photographed something like 570 weddings since in that time. So, I've kind of cracked on with it. And the important thing I think that we'll take away from the image, I'm going to show you a lot of images, is this idea. The important thing for me is the ability to connect to the subject through photography without directing, without prompting, and keeping it very, very candid and very, very natural, which is critical for me and my clients. So I'm going to show you, I always do this at the beginning of any kind of workshop, is I'll show you a few images, just a couple, from my very, very first body of work, which is 9th of August, 2008. And the reason I show this is because, we've all been to webinars and seminars and workshops and everything where the presenter often shows what they want to show, that they cherry pick the images. And I think it's important for everybody to realize that actually it's always a journey. It's a long journey, and it's a journey that is forever going on. So I hope that when I show you these pictures, you'll see how my style and my images have changed. But then perhaps more importantly, I hope that in 2032, if we have another conference call in 2032, I can show you images from this year and you can see that they've progressed and improved again. That's the important thing, that we're always learning, we're always moving on. Okay, so this was actually the very first image that I took at a wedding, very, very first one ever. And in those days, I was shooting with Canon cameras, very good cameras, but kind of big and heavy, but they were perfect at the time. And this image is not too bad, actually. It's reasonable, but it's very poignant because it demonstrates my lack of understanding of light. In this case, I think probably, it's a long time ago, so I think probably I will have just focused on the bride there with the flowers during bridal prep, and then just increased exposure compensation and not really understood what was going on. And one of the critical things that I think that I have learned, and hopefully that's important to you as photographers, is the understanding that light is never our enemy. It's always our friend. It's just how we use that light. Whether that means you add artificial light via flash or strobes, or you understand that even natural light can always be good. It just depends on how you use it, where you position yourself, how you meter in the camera, all of those various things. So that was my very first picture. And in this picture, you can see actually that previous one was in the background of this. So this is my second photograph, or second or third photograph at this particular wedding. And this is what I call the dentist chair photography. So this is basically the mum of the bride having her makeup done. The angle's wrong, the exposure's wrong, the moment is wrong. You know, there's no way. She was a lovely woman, if I remember rightly, but there's no way that she would have looked at this picture and thought, oh, I'm really pleased that was the first picture I saw on my daughter's wedding day of myself. And of course, one of the things I did then, which is very easy to do, is think that editing tools will save us, and filters and all of that kind of stuff. And editing is very important. But, you know, we can all be over aggressive with things like the clarity slider and all that kind of stuff and think, wow, you know, it's giving it some punch. But actually, if it's not a very good image in the first place, it just won't be a very good image at all. Okay, so same wedding, of course, first kiss. Now, this is really, really important. And I'm not sure about in Norway, but this is, you know, in the UK, the first kiss is kind of the image that you must get. If you don't get that, then it's a bit of a failure. If they do it, they don't always do it. So in this case, I've got it, but I've got it very badly. This is one of the reasons why you will see very, very few vertical images from me. I feel like as a documentary storytelling photographer, and this may be something that hopefully you take on board also, there's more story on the outside. There's always stuff going on in the periphery. You can crop if necessary, but shooting vertically usually is going to block out some of the important stuff. So here I've shot vertically for whatever reason, I'm not sure. My positioning is wrong. Everything about this picture is not great. Actually, the dad in the background is quite a nice shot of him, although it's, you know, the cropping is bad there. Really, the most prominent part of this image is those two ghostly hands that are clapping in the foreground. So, you know, what I'm trying to show you here is that there's lessons to be learned at all times. And that does not mean, of course, that all of the images are going to be perfect going forward. But bearing these things in mind, there's only three very simple principles: light, composition, and moment. And those three things are critical at all times. Okay, group shots. Now, again, it's a cultural thing sometimes. In some parts of the world, this is very important. In others, it's less so. In the UK, it's important, but perhaps not as important as it was. Now, this is a lesson perhaps in client management as well as photography. So it was maybe, remember, this was the 9th of August, 2008. So it was the height of the summertime here. And it was, so you can see it's dark outside. And that's because it was nearly 11 o'clock at night. And, you know, the bride and the groom had come on board with my style of storytelling documentary photography. And at 11 o'clock, they said, oh, what about the group shots? We haven't done any group shots. And we ended up doing 41 group shots at 11 o'clock at night. And most of them were in this corner of the room. Lots of people not looking at the camera, lots of people you can't even see. There's plates and cups and saucers. It was just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Now, from a photo point of view, you know, they were very happy with the pictures. They fully understood it was my first wedding. In fact, it was free. But, you know, again, these are lessons learned, very, very important for me as we go through these set of images. Okay, so an epiphany. This in the background, by the way, is what's called a Victorian death picture. So in Victorian days, kind of 1800s, they would often take photos of people after they passed away, because that's when they were still. That was when they were the most stillest. So if you look at that picture there, you can see the unfortunate gentleman lying there with the pillow behind his head. He's actually the sharpest part of this image. And that's because he's not moving at all, because he's dead. Everybody else has to sit very, very, very still. And I jokingly say to my clients sometimes, this is what my idea of group shots are. And of course, it is humor only because I have very good friends who do amazing editorial wedding photography, and it's beautiful. But for everybody else who doesn't want that style, there is definitely photographers out there who use candid photography as their mechanism. Okay, so Don McCullough, another famous photographer from the UK, Magnum photographer too, has this very famous quote: "Photography for me is not looking, it's feeling. If you can't feel what you're looking at, then you're never going to get others to feel anything when they look at your pictures either." And you can't see it, but I have it over there in the back side of my studio on the wall, that quote, because it's really important that whenever specifically when I'm taking pictures, but also when I'm editing pictures, that I'm reminded of this constantly, making pictures that matter, feeling first and technique second. And to that end, it is far more important for me personally to have images that have emotional impact than images that lack emotional impact, but are perhaps technically better. Those of you that do shoot candid, and we all shoot candidly, you all take snapshots of your friends, your family, whether that's on your phone or your camera or around town or whatever. We all make candid pictures. And you will all have had pictures that might be slightly out of focus, slightly grainy, not exactly perfectly composed, but actually they might be your favorite pictures. When you think back to the pictures of your childhood on beaches and snowfields, all that kind of stuff. Those kind of action moments, if you like, are the ones that sing to us. Okay, so briefly, this is typically the gear that I would take to any job really, whether it's wedding or street photography or family photography. X Pro 3, XT4 with the 18mm 1.4 lens and 56 1.2. So for those of you that shoot full frame cameras, 35mm, that's the equivalent of around about 23mm and 85mm in terms of the lenses. And I'll usually have a Fujifilm X70 or an X100V in my jacket pocket as well, just in case both those bodies go down, or if I'm in kind of close quarter combat, as I call it, in the drinks reception and various things like that, where you need to get really close and just use a very small camera. As I said, I used to shoot with Canon equipment, which was great. And, I've got some of my favorite pictures with those cameras. But ultimately, when the Fujifilm system came along, it was the only affordable, smaller camera system for me. It was either that or Leica. And I knew that I wanted something smaller because that would allow me to get closer to subjects, tell more stories, be less obtrusive. And that was the reason why I ended up going with Fujifilm. Stayed with them ever since. Of course, now Canon, Nikon, Sony, Penta, everybody, all of the camera manufacturers have smaller mirrorless cameras. So there's lots of choice out there, but I do definitely subscribe to this idea that if you're shooting storytelling pictures, you need to get in close, and you will need to use equipment that is smaller and less obtrusive. I'm not a huge fan myself personally of standing on the sidelines and using a long telephoto lens, because you end up just getting what I would call record shots, headshots of people really, rather than hopefully telling this story. As I keep saying, story is important. Okay, so documentary wedding photography, what is it? It's there's three words there, three terms: candid, reportage, photojournalism. That's what we hear all the time. They're the marketing spiel, but ultimately it's just candid, and candid is an adjective, and by that I mean that it cannot be changed. So if I'm taking a photograph of a cup of tea in front of me, for example, if I move that, or I move the light, or I change it in any way, it's no longer a candid image. Candid is an adjective, and there is no kind of gray area for it. So, it's really important for me and for my clients to understand that every image that I take will be candid. I will have no interaction. But I will be looking for images such as the one you can see in front of you here. So this is another important part of the wedding ceremony, is the ring exchange. And now I will obviously have taken a picture of the ring going on the finger, but then I'm immediately looking around. I'm looking for other stories within this moment. And here we've got Dad looking at the ring going on the finger. He's the dad of the bride. And I love this picture because, you kind of fall into his soul, and you're thinking, I wonder what he's thinking. Is he thinking back to his own wedding day? Is he thinking this wedding's costing me a fortune? Is he thinking that she's picked a really good husband? What's going on? And that's good. If it leaves us asking questions, I think that's a nice moment, really beautiful kind of image of dad there. Now, if you think about those pictures from your own past, which I mentioned, which ones make you smile? It is those real memories. They're the ones that make you smile. And I mentioned the candid element of things, but nostalgia is super important too. So I want my clients in, 40 years' time to look at their wedding pictures and remember actual things that happened rather than think, oh yeah, do you remember when the photographer made us do this? Or when we were dragged away from the wedding or whatever, and I think also at this point, I want to make it. It's important for me to let you know that just because I shoot this way does not mean it's the right way, and it's certainly not the only way. I attract clients that want this. There are many, many clients, and as I said, I've got many good friends who shoot weddings in very different ways. But the important thing to remember throughout all of this is that this is the objective for me and the hope of my clients. So this idea of nostalgia is really important. To that end, I don't even have. I don't put branding on my wedding albums or my books or anything like that. I just want them to open those first images and immediately go straight back in time to that day and that moment. And that element there of integrity at the bottom. It is easy to sometimes think, oh, if I could just get them to do this, or if I tell them a joke and they smile, or if I tell the kids to move around a little bit, then you can still get images that appear to be candid, but they won't be candid just because of what I just said about the integrity of those shots is really, really important. So every single picture that you see here and on my website and everywhere else are real moments in time, real things that happened without any kind of interaction. And I say without any interaction. The interaction on my part is movement, anticipation. I use my ears a lot to understand what's going on. But I'm always looking for things like emotion, eye contact, human interaction, images like this during a ceremony. Actually, in the UK, if you don't get married in the church, you're not allowed to have any religious elements in your service whatsoever. You're not allowed to have any hymns or mention God or anything like that. But this particular wedding, they brought with them a pastor, and he stood up and did these prayers. And the registrar, the woman, the legal person at the wedding, was looking at me thinking, "Oh my word, this is actually illegal." However, the image itself is beautiful. They both closed their eyes. They both kind of fell into their prayerful thoughts, and I wanted to get that image. So the thinking about the stuff that's going on is really, really important. Critically here, I would have taken just one picture, maybe two, but one or two maximum. What I won't be doing, and I think this is important, is taking lots and lots and lots and lots of pictures and hoping that one of them is better than the rest. You have to have confidence in your own skills. And actually, I say that, but using mirrorless cameras of any brand, have electronic viewfinders, so you can see in the viewfinder what you're going to get. So there's no real excuse to worry about exposures and stuff now. However, it's really important that I don't interrupt the moment. I don't want them to suddenly open their eyes and think, what's all that clicking going on? Or, why is he moving around? Very, very important. That way the moment carries on and the integrity of the moment exists. Okay, so this is an image from a few years back. Again, same thing, integrity, really, really important. And this is a good segue into the connection between using my ears and using my eyes at the same time. So this wedding was in France, in the south of France, and they were an American couple. And I'd overheard her talking to one of her friends, explaining the reason why they'd brought all of their family over to America was because their grandmother lived in France and she couldn't travel, she couldn't fly. So I didn't know that before that moment in time. They hadn't told me that, but I overheard it. So that made me immediately think, well, if they've spent all of their time and money bringing people across to France for this wedding, then obviously the grandmother must be really, really important to the bride. So this is the moments after the wedding ceremony when everybody starts hugging and congratulating. And so I'm keeping an eye out for the grandmother. The mother there is in the background actually, but I'm keeping an eye out for the grandmother especially. And as they come together at this point, again, this idea of integrity is super, like, this is probably one image that is the most important in terms of this message I'm trying to get across. So I actually shot this from chest level. So I had the camera, I'm not sure if you can still see my face in the corner, but I had the camera just below my chin, effectively. Got in nice and close. A couple of pictures, then I move away. I let them have that moment. The last thing I want to happen is for them to, or the grandmother especially, to think, oh, the photographer's here. I must smile. I must look at the camera and stare at the camera, all of that kind of stuff. The thought of this moment in time not, being wiped from history just because of my presence or the presence of my camera clattering away is pretty heartbreaking. So the moment is critical, super critical. And, if we look at this image from a technical perspective, it won't win awards because the judges will be looking at things like overall composition, cropping, all of that kind of stuff. And we've got the bridesmaid in the background who's picking something out of her eyes. We've got there's somebody on the right of the frame that's cropped. We've got mum, obviously, who's, kind of floating in the background. So technically, it won't win those awards. However, more importantly, as I said right at the beginning, is that moment and the importance of that moment for my clients in, like I say, in 40 years' time. Another image, similar message here. Again, this is a case of hearing something and using my ears to let me go forward and make the picture. This was taken with the X100 many years ago. This is a Sikh wedding, I should say, early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I'd overheard the day before the auntie, which is the lady facing us, had come over from India, especially for the wedding. And I thought, right, okay, so I must keep an eye out for her in the morning. And there we go. So this is the bride with her back to us, and the auntie's come all the way over from India. And this has the double power, I think, in that it has the human touch, the physical touch, but also the eye contact. And I think those two elements together are really important. Hands, especially, we do everything with our hands. We eat, clean, we communicate, we do everything with our hands. And I think that they give us a very good signpost towards people's relationships with each other. You can often tell how close people are emotionally to each other, the way that they use their hands. And so that, again, gives you an insight into them ready for the rest of the day. Okay, so another shot. Now, again, this is an image that wouldn't win any awards, but I like it. I love it, in fact. But this is another case of thinking about light first, light and moment first. So this is a wedding venue in the south of London, and it's a beautiful wedding venue. It's got a lovely inside, and it's got lovely lawns and gardens outside. But in between the inside and the outside is effectively a really dark chamber. Everybody has to walk through to get in and out. And the bride and groom had come out, and I often come out right behind the bride and groom so I can try and make sure I'm ready for these kind of emotional pictures that happen immediately after a wedding. And the groom turned around and saw his dad approaching him, and his dad was on a walking stick. So instead of going out into the lawn, the groom approached his dad in this dark area. So at that point, as I saw the groom walking towards the father, I was on the left-hand side of the frame as you look at it. And I knew that I would never get this picture. I'd never get the picture I needed because the light wasn't there. Now, if you think back to that image at the beginning when I said that, I did not know what to do with light, ultimately it's about moving yourself, getting yourself in position. So quickly moving behind the groom here. There's not a lot of space. I'm backed up to a wall. Very quickly, take the picture I want and then move away. But if I'd stayed where I was, I just wouldn't have got this image. Just would have disappeared. The moment would have happened, but the image would never have been captured. Another example here, nice and close, tears and all of that kind of stuff. Very important to allow these things to happen and then move on. Moving on is, part of the skill, I think, is in being a documentary photographer is knowing when not to take pictures, knowing when to stop. And you get a good idea of that as you understand the the day that evolves, and the characteristic and the personalities of people shooting around this moment, and by that I mean taking many, many, many frames, is just going to disturb it, and that's what they will remember rather than this actual moment in time. Similar thing, keeping an eye out for everything that's going on. So here we have the grandmother and the bridesmaid. The bride, as you can see on the right-hand side, is kind of right in the foreground, out of focus. But I'm concentrating at this time. I am concentrating on her and who she's speaking to and what's going on. But I'm always looking outside of the frame. I usually shoot with one eye open. So the reason why I like the rangefinder style cameras is because I can shoot with my right eye to the viewfinder and then keep this eye open. So keeping this eye open allows me to look around the frame all the time. And by doing that, I can see stuff that's happening. And you can see stuff that's happening, of course. So, I'm seeing the bride's sister, the bridesmaid, having this lovely tender moment with the grandmother, wiping her face, and just that interaction again. Hands, really important. Now, I remember vividly this picture because I was in the middle of taking something else, saw this happen. But what I didn't actually want was to kind of step to the left too far, because I did want to include some part of the bride to give the picture context. So I did purposefully kind of include the bride's veil in the frame to try and give that context. Although, half a step to the left probably would have been better. But what I didn't want was for it to be too far, because then I would have been too far behind the bridesmaid and not got enough of that lovely connection. So we've got that eye contact, we've got that hand. All of that stuff is really beautiful. We spoke about this image earlier. That was at the top of this section. But again, eyes, all in the eyes. Okay, so as I mentioned, in passing, in talking through those images, it's human interaction. Any form of human touch is powerful. Humor, the funny side of elements is always going to make for an interesting picture, and eye contact. Those three things together, if you're concentrating on those feelings, it will come natural. Honestly, there is no real, there's no difficulty in taking this type of picture, I feel. The difficulty is in the observance skills. So I often say to people, at workshops and stuff, that you're not here today to be taught how to be a photographer. You're here today to be taught how to be an observer. Anybody can press the button on the camera. Anybody can understand aperture, shutter speed, ISO, all of that kind of stuff. But only you as an individual person can see what you want to see. And it would be a really boring world if we all saw the same stuff, of course. But by learning and honing your observation skills will allow you to capture moments that perhaps would pass you by. And through every walk of life, regardless whether it's weddings or street photography or anything else, it's just people being people. I'm a people curious person. I love watching people. I quite often just sit in a coffee shop and just watch the world go by. And you learn a lot by doing things like that, and you understand these interactions between humans, if you like. So this is a very old picture. This was taken 2010, 2009, I think, in my first year. And what was happening here was the bride, this is on my old Canon 1D Mark III, I think it was. The bride's sister, whose legs we can see here, and the little daughter was the bridesmaid on the day. And this is before the wedding, and the little girl was misbehaving. So the mum just basically put her on the floor. Those of you who've had kids have all been through this moment, I'm sure. Just put her on the floor and just like, right, okay, whatever, do whatever you want. So at that point, I get right down on my knees. There's no such thing as flip screens in those days. Get right down on my knees, and I'm shooting right through the legs to give that kind of framing. And really the only time I kind of hope that people look directly at the camera is when it's children, young children, because they have no idea what they're doing, and they will look, and you have this kind of look on her face, this abject kind of, I want to do what I want to do, and she's probably for the last 18 months been super excited about this wedding, and now when the day comes, she's like, no, I don't want to wear this dress. I want to do what I want to do. Okay, so this, unfortunately, this is cropped on the right-hand side, but you can see it on my website. So the reason I was showing you this was because of the story that's evolving on the right-hand side, but my screen and Zoom don't go very well together. I've got a very wide screen. So there is, you can see on the right-hand side, the mum is doing the bridesmaid's dress up. And in the real picture, the whole story is there, and you see the mum's head and face, and she's got a lovely smile on her face. Again, so looking for these extra things that are going on. It's not just about the makeup at this point, it's about everything else that's going on around the scene. And if you can make a strong composition from it, it's going to be a more powerful picture. And often all that takes is observation. That's the key. Just thinking, oh yeah, there's something else going on there. How can I connect these dots? How can I keep these things together to make these two parts of the frame work together as a story? It's a mini story within a story. Okay, so here, another picture that I really love. This is, I don't know about in Norway, but over here, if you get married in a church, invariably, you always have the ladies that live by the church or help at the church. They all come out, and they come with their little 1970s cameras, and they've all got the same kind of hair and clothes. They've always got umbrellas, even in the middle of the summer. They're nothing to do with the wedding. They just come from the houses nearby. They must have hundreds of pictures of strangers that they've got no idea who they are. And these people were here, and I thought, I really want to kind of capture this moment. It's a very British thing. But what I didn't want to do is just take a picture of these strangers, because that would be weird when the clients got their wedding pictures and they saw these strange people. So I waited for the groom to pass into the frame. Now, this is an example of something that the timing wasn't quite right. I needed to get the timing right, and I didn't get it quite right, and there was no opportunity for this to happen again. So there is a third lady behind the groom, and he just moved too quickly. I didn't get it quite right. But it would have been a much stronger image had he been a few paces back, and I'd got my timing spot on. But I do love it. I love the fact that, we have that one lady there with her permed hair, looking very, very, nonchalant, very kind of, another young person getting married kind of thing. And then that little 1970s camera. Okay, another lovely image. I think this is what I often talk. I show this picture to my clients when when we have the discussion about group shots, and I often show them this picture because this is the family having their picture taken by somebody. And I'm buzzing around the sides. I'm looking for these little emotions, these little bits of humor. This little lad who's like, oh my word, I've been told to sit up straight, make sure my suit's together. I don't really know what to do. And he's just glancing at me and smiling. And he's really kind of thinking, I think I'm in trouble, but I'm not sure if I am. And that always makes me smile, that kind of picture. So here, another image that is, you at first glance, you might look at this and think, this does not look quite right. And the story behind this is that, again, this is an overheard conversation. I got to the wedding, and the groom had not told me that the vicar was his dad. So the vicar was his father, and the vicar seemed to be more nervous than the groom, actually. And this is before the wedding. So once I realized that the vicar was the groom's dad, he suddenly was elevated in his importance on the wedding day. So I concentrated a lot more on him, of course. So at that point, at one point he went outside. He believe it or not, he had a cigarette. He did his shoelaces up, all that kind of stuff. And then his car pulls up, and this lady gets out, which turns out to be the groom's mum. So this is husband and wife before the wedding, and the husband obviously is the vicar. But when I took this picture, I didn't know who the wife was either. So part of me was thinking, I'm not even sure whether I should take this picture. But then it became, very apparent shortly afterwards that they were husband and wife. So just kind of looking out for these moments as well. Very, very kind of interesting. Okay, here we have another image that is about the light primarily, but also there is a story to tell within this frame. So in this case, what I was trying to do was, there was this beautiful kind of directional light at this wedding. High summer, probably maybe 3-4 o'clock in the evening. And I could see this kind of Batman style light falling on the lady's face there. And what I noticed throughout the day, and this is where serendipity comes into it, luck comes into this. What I noticed throughout the day was that the guy there with the orange blazer on, had been chatting to the girl on the right-hand side quite a lot. Let's just say quite a lot. The lady delivering the food. You know, they were getting on very well. And at one point, right at this point, in fact, she walked past with some food, and the said guy with his orange blazer was about to go off and grab some food and perhaps have a little bit of a chat with her again. But the wife grabbed his finger, pulled him back, and then we get this look, you know, this look of contempt in her face, and that Batman light on her eyes as well. So bringing it all together is quite a humorous picture, but it's total luck. All of this together is luck, because obviously you cannot stage this, you cannot direct it. And there are some images that are perhaps images that you might not include, and some images you might include. I choose to show this when I talk about workshops and stuff, but I didn't include it for the clients. This image also, again, you know, this little lad, this kind of humor. If you look there, again, it's cropped slightly, but if you look there on the left-hand side, the lady's got a bag of cereal, Cheerios, we call them. I'm not sure if you have them in Norway. And the little lad was properly misbehaving. And she basically pulled him around like he was on a lead, you know, like on a dog leash. And she would kind of drag him and bribe him with these cereal, which he would plunge his hand to and eat and get up and run around, and then he'd be good as gold for a while, and then he'd misbehave again. So I purposely didn't include her face in this because I wanted it to have this element of mystery and kind of not quite understanding what was going on. But the three things connected together, I think, make for quite a humorous picture. People being people, remember we're talking about. So here, another image where I'm concentrating on the light, a beautiful kind of Georgian house in southwest London. I've got one eye on the mirror, and what I want to happen is for the bride or the groom or something interesting to happen in that mirror. It doesn't happen, so the mirror falls out of the equation. It would have been wonderful if it did, but it didn't. I'm not going to Photoshop something in. But the interaction between the four main characters in the frame is what really intrigues me. So we have the two gents and the two ladies. Now the ladies are having a lovely, jolly old time at this wedding. You know, they're drinking their champagne, they're smiling. You know, they haven't seen each other for a few years, and the two guys are like, "We're missing the football. I really wish I was somewhere else." And I love that. I love that kind of juxtaposition between these people, because you see it all the time in everyday walk of life, but at weddings you see it a lot. But primarily what's drawing me to this part of the frame, or to this part of the wedding, is the light. You know, again, it's that light. Now this particular wedding venue it's like shooting fish in a barrel, really, because you can just, there's windows everywhere and the light is wonderful. You can just stand in one place. Okay, so this image, the hand on the right-hand side that you can see stopping or helping stop the cake topple over is my hand. They're doing the cake cut. It's very boisterous. You know, there's lots of music and everything going on. They plunge the knife in and it starts toppling. So the groom reaches around to try and stop it. I stick my finger in it to try and stop it toppling as well. But keep on shooting. You know, you've got to get that moment. And, you know, I love her face as well, because I don't think either of them were aware that the bottom of the tier of the cake was much harder than the top. So they're kind of plunging into it. Okay, so I included this one because this was also in Norway. This was another wedding I shot in Norway several years ago. Helg and his lovely wife Elizabeth. Now this was the name evades me, but it was way up in the Arctic Circle. This was in July, about 3 or 4 years ago, and what you'll be very much aware of this, obviously, but it was 24-hour sunlight, which kind of threw me a little bit. But the interaction here between their 3 kids, those children are their kids, was beautiful. You know, I love this picture. They've come out of the church. The confetti, the rice is being thrown. You got the little girl who's chewing on a coat hanger. The other lad's hiding under the umbrella because it's raining or starting to rain. And it's just this lovely, great picture that, you know, is full of fun, full of family. You know, really beautiful picture, I think. And then we have shots like this. Of course, these moments kind of happen all the time throughout weddings. Again, cropped, so it's looking a little bit distorted, but, you know, I'm always on the lookout for people behaving slightly other than they would do. And details as well are really important, though, throughout all of this. So things like the table decorations, the venue, the cake, all of that kind of stuff will all be taken. It's all part of the story. That's very important to remember. But also, I'm looking out, before the wedding, I'm looking for this kind of stuff, the before the scene stuff that nobody else will see. The bride and groom will never see these types of images. Somebody's delivered the cake, you've got that box, they won't see the box ever again, the Hoover's there, the vacuum cleaner, all of these things, build the story, and it's all about telling that story. Really important. Okay, shots like this as well. Again, it's cropped slightly, but again, primarily about the light, but also about everything else that's going on in the frame. So the bride here is, having her own little kind of thoughts about the day, what's about to happen, what's going on. And then in the background, you have this very cluttered room, clothes everywhere, dad's in the middle of getting dressed. All of these things make for this to be a very interesting picture. But also you have all of these different elements of this room, this wonderful, wonderful room in this old house they lived in. You've got that fireplace, you've got all those pictures on the mantelpiece. You've got artwork on the walls. You've got a 4-poster bed. All of these things will change. They will all disappear and move, and they may move house, or the pictures will move, whatever. All these things will change. And yet they can look at this picture in time and think, yeah, do you remember when we had this room like that? And, whatever else is going on. And, I love all of that kind of history-making element of things, if you like. Okay, so let's move on. But it's important to remember the romance. The real important stuff is everything that goes on throughout the day. They're getting married, and they're getting married because they love each other, and that's important to make sure that is captured and captured well. Some people sometimes forget that actually it's not just a brutalistic look at documentary photography at weddings. It is actually the probably, hopefully, most important day of their lives. And it has to be captured sympathetically and romantically, beautifully, hopefully. Okay, so what we've got here is that same bride and groom that you just saw. They're just about to leave the church to walk down the confetti over here. Again, I don't know if you have it in Norway, but everybody lines up very peculiarly and throw confetti on each other. Well, you must have it in Norway, because I just showed that picture of the one wedding up in northern Norway. So it's a very standard picture, is to, you have the bride and groom running down this aisle and everybody throwing confetti. It's quite a tricky picture to get right, but it's a pretty standard picture. But what I always try and do is turn around before the bride and groom come down that aisle. I turn around, and so I capture what they see. This is what they see just before they run down that aisle, that confetti line. And I think this is wonderful. You get to see so many people, faces, everybody interacting, they're chatting with you. This is the very first moments that a lot of these people will chat to each other on this particular day. This is the moment straight after the wedding ceremony. And I love this. I love the fact that, we're getting this real bird's eye view of what the bride and groom are about to see. And then this is them. So I've turned around. This is them walking out to the church, and they're about to go down that aisle and get the confetti thrown over them. But yeah, people. So, as I said earlier about little kids, it's always just looking out for these characters, these little moments in time, these little snippets. And this little lad was, being thrown up and down by his dad, who was chatting to his friend there, and then he caught my eye, or he was intrigued by the camera, I presume, the little boy, staring straight at me, and yeah, bless him. Okay, so don't be a paparazzi that says fill the frame, so you can get in really close and still get these really great pictures. So in this case, I said earlier, I'm trying to create images that are from a guest's eye point of view. So we're right in the mix. I am a guest at this wedding for all intents and purposes. I'll behave like a guest, I'll dress like a guest, I stand where the guests stand. I'll do everything I can to give them images that look like another guest took that picture. Really important. And again, moving in close, moving away quickly. Super important for this part of the day, this moments after the wedding. In close, take the picture, move away, see what else happens, see what else occurs. So here, again, we're talking about filling the frame here and not being afraid to get close. So in this case, I have the little girls here are being given a pep talk by the mum of the bride. This is that French wedding we talked about earlier. And the kids are being told to behave themselves and don't do this and do that and all of these things that happen at weddings. Now, if I was too far away, this wouldn't have the same impact because I really wanted to get that beautiful girl's face, the light falling on it, her hair. And then we also have this, the other girl on the right-hand side who's kind of thinking, I'm not listening so carefully, but I'll do my best, and filling that frame, getting that right in. Now, this is taken from the hip also. So if I got down on my knees and taken this with my camera to my eye, those girls would have looked directly at me. But bringing the camera down to my hip level or my waist level, I can shoot across. This was with a flip screen, so you can use a flip screen for this kind of thing. And they then don't have any clue. They're not interested in you at all. Get down too close and they will be. Same thing here, always behind the bride and groom during these first parts after the ceremony when people are hugging. What you don't want is for the bride to see you constantly in her face. And obviously there's going to be loads and loads of pictures of the bride throughout the day. So behind the bride will yield, in most cases, better imagery of this part of the day because you are, you're concentrating on the hug giver rather than the hug receiver. Same thing here, very similar, exactly the same position. Okay, and then even down on the dance floor, getting close. It's different. Different weddings have different dancing experiences, if you like. Some of them are much more raucous, some of them are less so. But getting close and filling that frame is something that's fun. And here, this is from a couple of weeks ago. In fact, this wedding. And he's got the baby with the ear defenders on there to stop him from getting too deaf. But Dad's having a jolly old time. He's still really enjoying himself there. And here as well, same thing, nice and close. Again, you can really feel the movement and feel the motion. And again, technically, it's not great. There's a little bit of motion blur. He's not particularly 100% sharp. But that moment, that face, that sheer happiness on his face is brilliant. And then we get that idea, we get that sense of movement from her as she's dancing very quickly. Okay, and we're still talking about filling the frame here. Remember, so we're back in a church, nice big church in London. Now, unfortunately, the videographer there, as you can see in the front, it's not his fault. He has a job to do too, so he's doing his thing. It would have been better if he wasn't there, but I wanted to get not only the hand contact between them, but the decor, the beautiful kind of surrounding of the church, the best man and the chief bridesmaid there on the left-hand side too, and the videographer is there forever as well. Double hugs. You get bonus points for double hugs. Again, right behind the bride and the groom, you can get these things all day long. And this is the stuff they love. These are the types of pictures they absolutely adore. 18mm lens, nice and close. Take the shot, move away, come back. Okay, so Dad and the bride walking down the aisle before the ceremony starts. Again, so this is now using the 56mm lens, which would be the 85 full frame equivalent. And that, that light is special in this church, but it's only in a certain place. So I have to prepare myself for when they walk through that spot of light. If I don't get them at the right time walking through that spot of light, then it's either going to be too dark or too bright, and I'm going to have to rely on either post-processing or exposure compensation to save it. But remember what I said right at the beginning, light is always your friend. So seeing that light ahead of time allows me to think, right, I'm going to wait. I'm going to meter accordingly for that pool of light. I'm going to wait for them to get into it, and then I'm going to take my picture. Same wedding. This is actually straight away after the service. She's now with her husband, nice and close again, but you'll see I've stepped to the left. So I'm doing that same thing where I'm not kind of right in the middle of the confetti line. I'm moving to the left. So I'm trying to give them this idea of this kind of guest side point of view. This was actually a tricky wedding. This was a wedding not so long ago also, but they had everything was outside, like literally everything, including the dancing, which is nice to see. But they decided to dance very late. So this is at like 11:30 at night. So this is a 12,800 ISO image. I'm really kind of pushing the exposure here. Not a lot was happening for quite a long time, and then boom, they come onto the dance floor and they start doing the swan dive and everything, and that's what makes the picture. Now, again, there's elements of this frame that are not perfect. such as the four ladies on the back left. If they weren't there, that would be better. The two characters on the back right, if they weren't there, that would be better. But like I say, you can't dictate this stuff. Here's that pool of light again, by the way. We're just at the other direction. She's coming up with her groom now. Okay, and talking about details and light, brides, they really want to see their wedding dress. And so I'm always going to be taking shots of the details of the dress, however I can throughout the day, but without them being posed. So in this case, the bride is waiting for dad to come into the room before the wedding. So she sees her dad for the first time, and I'm waiting for him to walk in the room through that door over there. And now I'm very close. I can't go backwards. I can't do anything. So I'm using my 18mm lens here to take a series of detail shots effectively to try and give us a sense of that, nice light and beautiful dress that she's wearing. So we have those three images that kind of work together really well. Signing of the register. This is, again, another part of the day that often we're not allowed in this country to take pictures of them physically signing the book. It's illegal. But there's always stuff going on around it. There's always stuff, the bride and groom there have just got married. The vicar and the mum, one of the mums is kind of looking at the paperwork, but there's the story, isn't it? Right behind, everything's going on there. Other people won't even see that. And here we have another wedding where they're coming down the aisle, eye contact, all those lovely smiling faces. Nice, fill in the frame. That's what we're talking about here. Fill that frame. Don't be afraid to let the images sing in the frame. Okay, so stepping back at that point, we've talked about filling the frame, and now we're talking about stepping back. This wedding, the one you can see here, was at Stonehenge, 5 o'clock in the midsummer, or the day before Midsummer's Eve, 5:30 in the morning. And if you look carefully, you can just see the Druids wandering up to the Stonehenge. At the front, they were going to do the ceremony. But I didn't really want to give just a picture of the stones as their venue picture, because actually there's millions and millions of pictures of Stonehenge. So I wanted to give this idea of them approaching it, this kind of destiny thing. Now, this picture actually works much better in color. You can see that on my website. But the kids, the little lads dressed as Thor, they're walking up together. It's a beautiful moment, but stepping back nice and wide to get that context in. Now, that same room that we've seen several pictures from, again, looking, watching, stepping back, not being afraid to think, okay, I need to take details of that wedding dress hung up. I don't need to take pictures of that wedding dress hung up. You can, of course, you can do that. But what's more interesting for me is this combination of the reflection in the mirror, the element of the dress, and then also the shoes there, which is, the kind of bit of luck, really, I suppose. And here we are. So remember that door that I just said Dad was about to walk in and I was behind her. So I've taken my shots of the back of her dress. She's waiting for Dad to come through the frame. And then I spot that mirror, or I've seen the mirror previously, and she's just kind of perfectly in that mirror. There's all kinds of other clutter in this frame. There's wires and cables and bags and everything else. But they're there. That's real life, and that's how it is. Okay. Oh, this is that other picture. Sorry that we were cropped off earlier. So this is the connection of that frame, if you like, so we can see the full story there in the background. All right. And again, nice and wide, we're talking about here. So the bride and the bridesmaid had gone into the bathroom to put a necklace on. Now, I'm not going to go bumbling into that bathroom with them and be over her shoulder in the mirror. That's just going to totally and utterly upset the apple carts. So what I'm doing is shooting across the bed. I'm getting in more kind of details of the room, but I'm concentrating on that light and giving us this voyeuristic view, if you like, of what's going on in that bathroom. Okay, nice and wide again. Now, in this case, this wedding was actually a really beautiful wedding, but there was only 12 guests and I was with them for 15 hours near enough. So it was quite difficult. And when they did their dancing, they were the only ones there. There was, a handful of other people joined them later. So they were dancing on this very reflective floor. So I wanted to try and give some kind of element of that into this picture. So this is shot from the ground level using the flip screen, right across the floor, pick it up, and then shoot that across. This one, again, nice and wide. Again, before the wedding, everybody's kind of getting stuck in to help. They're all kind of, folding up napkins and getting place settings ready for the wedding ahead. You've got the lovely little baby on the left-hand side. That light fall on him is wonderful. But more importantly is everything that's going on. You know, everybody's helping, and the bride just won't see any of these pictures. This is all going on in the kitchen. She's in the bedroom. There's the color version of that image, which I think you'll probably agree is much stronger. Okay, so here also nice and wide, lots and lots of stories going on in this one frame. One picture, this has the venue in it. It has lots of characters in there. We have the little girl at the front who's looking a little bit lost because the balloon's deflated. The baby's having a little bit of a meltdown. We've got mum. We've got this other woman here who's got an inflatable horse for some reason. You've got conversations going on. You've got characters, all kinds of things going on in this one frame. You can look at this. If you're the bride and groom, you could probably look at this image many, 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 many times and see something new all the time. Nice and wide. Bride and the groom walking from the church to a marquee in the field. Now it's unfortunate that she hasn't got her flowers a little bit further down. That would have made it a much stronger picture. But other than that, it's great. You know, it's the colors, it's the combination, the flow of the bridesmaids behind them is nice. You know, it's a nice kind of connection. This is what I would call a connecting image. They've left the church, they're going to their reception, and this is the connection in between. Okay, and here we have the little baby, the little bridesmaid who, again, has spent probably 18 months being super excited. And now it's her time to walk down the aisle before anybody else, and she's terrified. In fact, she'd run off. But you've got grandmother there is kind of beckoning her, come on, you can do it. And she's just like, oh my word, all these faces staring at me. I don't know, I'm a bit nervous. This one also another old picture, but one I really, really love. This was taken with the X70 as well, which is a little pocket camera. You know, it's smaller than my mobile phone. And what we have here is the bride and groom about to leave in the car. But there's all kinds of other stuff going on, and all of the main people are involved in this picture. So in the door frame, in the window, unbeknownst to me at the time, so again, serendipity, luck, is one of the sisters and her husband. And you've got the two mums, you've got a dad, you've got that the brother, the groomsman, who was in the orange waistcoat. He's the one that got into trouble later. You've got the other dad, you've got the best man here with his camera. Now, what happens at this point, and I don't know whether it's the same in Norway, is usually when there's a car involved, the car driver will say to me, do you want me to open the window and give them some champagne so they can have a nice smiley picture through the window? And I always say, yeah, carry on, do that. But I never take that picture. I never take that standard picture that he's expecting of them staring through the window holding their champagne. What I do at that point is I move right away and allow everybody else to take that picture. As this guy, you can see here with his mobile phone, he's just taken that picture. But I'm not involving myself with that. I'm moving away and I'm exploring the environment around it. I'm exploring the people. I'm exploring everything else that's going on. Here again, during the drinks, the toasts, nice and wide. Don't be afraid. You know, filling the frame is important, but when there's lots of wide context, then it's good to stay wide. 18 mil. You know, it comes together with one of the girls on the right hand side raising her cheers glass as well. But everything else about this picture is really, really nice. Okay, so 12 significant photographs in any 1 year is a good crop. That's what Ansel Adams says. So this idea is, this idea of learning to see, being an observer, not a photographer, is really, really important. And just looking out, some old pictures here, but just looking out for these interactions. And if you're too busy just taking pictures, taking snap, you won't see it. You just will not. It's important to sometimes just put your camera down. You know, your clients or my clients or, your whatever job you're doing, they're not employing you necessarily to be a photographer. They're employing you to tell the story of their day. And that can manifest itself in many ways. But one thing's for sure, if you just end up with the camera to your eye thinking, well, I must have the camera to my eye because that's why they're employing me, I must look like I'm taking pictures, then it's not going to work. It's always better to not take a picture than take a picture that you know you're definitely not going to deliver. And then the less pictures you take, the more keepers you will get. It's pretty simple. Looking for these moments, this first interaction between the bride and groom. She's just walked down the aisle. Very first interaction that they have as a couple on their wedding day is that little mingling of the fingers, nervous mingling of the fingers. Nobody else will have seen this. They probably wouldn't even have remembered it. But actually, you know, I know that there's always going to be a first interaction of some kind, whether that's eye contact or whether that's a physical interaction, and I'm trying to make sure I'm ready to capture it. Yeah, stuff like this. Hands, you know, I said it, hands all the time. Always looking out for those kind of hands. Beautiful stuff. Everywhere you look. Hands, hands, hands. Now, in this case, this is the first dance. And again, the first dance is similar to, you know, that part of the day I just mentioned with the car. I will, of course, take the first dance pictures, the standard ones, but then we have this situation where everything else that's going on with the congregation or the guests at this point becomes far more interesting to me, far more interesting. You know, we have Dad there who's looking so proud. We have some weird and wonderful things going on in this frame. We've got an incredibly tall bloke at the back. I don't know, he must be about 7 feet. We've got people dressed like 1970s gangsters. You know, we've got bored-looking people. We've got people with cameras to their eyes, of course, phones to their eyes. But there's all kinds of things going on here. Now, I knew I'd got my first dance shots. That's done. It's in the bag. It's all sorted. So by doing this, I've got that. I've got the confidence to know it's there, but I'm not going to overshoot the first dance because there's so much more going on in the background, in the periphery. And being brave enough to think about that is important. So again, another example of a little girl, bridesmaid, during the service, during the ceremony. You know, I was waiting and hoping that she would look directly at me, and she did in the end. You know, beautiful face, beautiful smile. Again, stuff going on in the background. The bridesmaids, you know, they're having this big old hug, and then the makeup stuff becomes secondary at that point. Another bridesmaid just about to go down the aisle, nervous, look back to her mum. And what I love about this, I love her face and everything, but I love the little boy who's just about to put his arm on the other little bridesmaid and give her a little helping kind of shove, as it turned out. Go on, you go first. Okay, light. So light, as we said, is the most important thing. As somebody who shoots with natural light only or available light only for the most part, apart from the first dance, I have to make sure that I can work with this light. Now, in this case, as you can see with this picture, the room is nice. There's nice light flowing into it, but I can't move to the left because there's a radiator, there's a wall. So I'm thinking, you know, it's hairspray. There's not a great deal going on, but by using spot metering in my camera, I can actually make something of the light. So the moment is not particularly interesting, but the light and metering for that highlight area and then throwing everything else into shadows makes something a little bit more creative from the use of that very, very standard window light. Same thing here. Window light, super important. Just kind of metering for her, bringing myself out a little bit, so I can let that light in as well. And we get this really nice moment here. Same thing. This actually is in the church, just out that window, right opposite my studio. There's a pool of light that falls in through a one window in that church in the roof, and it falls perfectly on the front of the aisle there. And so again, spot metered, bring that highlights out, and then maybe in post-production I might have darkened, vignetted a bit several years ago, this wedding, but that light is beautiful. Now here's a tip that I often talk about on podcasts and stuff like that, is if you do have a mirrorless camera, I really encourage you to try and shoot as much as possible in black and white. Okay, that doesn't mean that if you're shooting RAW, your images will always be color. So just double check that your settings are either RAW or RAW plus JPEG. Your JPEGs will always be black and white in this case. But by shooting in black and white, you will see the light, you'll see the shadow, you'll see the fall off so much clearer. Honestly, you can just practice at home. Everything becomes all about the light and shade. And since I've been doing this for maybe 5 or 6 years, I shoot everything in black and white constantly, and I concentrate far more on the light now, far more. Here's that image we saw earlier, actually, same thing. Now, I just said that I use available light apart from first dance or on the dance floor. Now, this actually is using a very small LED. It's called a Manfrotto Lumimuse. It's a six bulb LED. It's the size of a matchbox, very light. And I just hold it in one hand and I'll shoot, and I'll get my exposure with that, and I'll shoot with the camera in the other hand. So I can direct it, can move it around. It's very easy for me to use. But that's it. Everything else is available light only. So I'm concentrating fully on that. Okay, so composition. That's the other key part of everything. Now, if you use Lightroom or Capture One or any of the other editing software tools, you'll have a crop overlay. And if you press O on the keyboard, you'll cycle through different crop overlays. And this one that we can see here is what's known as the Fibonacci spiral, golden circle, some people might call it. And this is probably the one that I use the most. So if I'm cropping or I'm editing, I'm trying to conform to that as much as possible wherever I can. You can press Shift and O to move the spiral around the four corners. Really, really important to think about composition. It's always the edges of the frame that seem to let us down. Now, here's a little trick. If you look at this particular image, nice image, nice and close, bride giving a kiss to a guest. And as I just said, the central part of this image is lovely. But where most images, including my own, it's really, really hard to get this right as a candid photographer, is on the edges of the frame, okay? And the easiest way to very, very quickly find out if your composition is good or not is to switch the image upside down. The moment you switch an image upside down, you will see all the deficiencies, because your brain doesn't have the context of understanding what the image is about. So it will take your eyes to the most obvious or most brutalist areas of the frame, brightest, darkest sometimes. Now, in this case, suddenly we realize that that big white blob of the marquee in the background actually is bad for the composition, really bad for the composition. So by looking at images upside down, you will get a very, very good idea of whether something is good or bad. And you can do that with images in a book or a magazine or your own pictures. Now, I don't suggest that you edit all of your pictures upside down. But what I do suggest is that if you're doing any kind of competition entries or portfolio work or anything like that, looking at them upside down. And you may, in fact, I may be speaking to the converted here, when you do your judging there for your competitions, maybe that's how you analyze the composition. But a really, really important way to edit. One of the reasons why, if you think of people like Vivian Mayer, who never even saw any of their own pictures, but, photographers in the 30s, 40s, 50s, they would be using like Rolleiflex cameras where they were looking down into the prism. So they were looking down in the viewfinder, vertically down. And what they're seeing there is an upside down image. They don't see, there was no mirror in those days, so it wasn't reflecting it back. So they're seeing the image upside down. And that's why I personally believe that composition, certainly from street photography point of view, in those days, was much stronger, because people took a lot more care, thinking, hang on, what's that in the background? What's this stuff going on? I need to move, or I need to wait for something else to happen. And so like bringing it all together as a series is critical. We can all take all of those pictures I've just shown you. We can all take those pictures. But really what's going to stand you out as a storyteller is the story. And in order to tell a story, rather than just have a series of pictures of people at a wedding, is to think about those 5 W's: who, why, what, where, and when. Those 5 W's will allow you to tell a story easily. I have the 5 W's: who, why, what, where, and when. And like composition moment, I have those written on the inside of my camera bag. So whenever I'm at a wedding and things are going slow, or even when I'm doing street photography or anything else, I'm thinking, right, have I answered who's here? Why are they here? What are they doing? Where are they? Critically, where are they? When are they here? The weather, the environment, the sounds of the stuff that's going on will help. So, if, for example, if you think perhaps not a lot's happening, put the camera down, record the audio of the room on your phone, take yourself away, listen to the audio. That will tell you who the boisterous characters are. You might hear the kitchen, you might hear the door slamming in the kitchen, or the chefs in the kitchen. That tells you, okay, right, I might be able to go into the kitchen and get some shots of the chefs doing their thing beforehand. If you can hear it, then they will have heard it too on the wedding day. So, that will really, really help you to think, okay, I must take less pictures, but I want to take more keepers, more images that are going to keep. And to that end, there's a lovely you can if you Google Tony Ray Jones, you'll find this on the internet. When he unfortunately died, they found his shooting notes in his bag, in his camera bag. And this is the early 80s, but you'll see there that most of the things that he said there are things that we've talked about. Be more assertive, get more involved, stay with the subject, take simpler pictures, watch the background, beware of composition, don't take boring pictures, don't overshoot, and get in closer. All of those things together will enable you, whether you're shooting weddings, street photography, family photography, anything that's not directed or studio based or controlled in any way, will allow you to make better storytelling pictures for sure. Definitely. So we talked about integrity and kind of keeping those moments together. And we have a few more of this kind of stuff. We saw that one, didn't we? So I wanted to show you this one, right? My favorite wedding photo of all time. And it will not win any awards. Definitely not, because it's grainy, it's a little bit out of focus, it's got hot spots in the background, it's compositionally awkward. But I always show this to my clients, my potential clients, and I say, this is what it's all about. This, because we all hopefully one day we'll be with our elderly wives or husbands and dancing away. This is what it's about. It's about moment. It's about emotion. It's about happiness. It's about love, and it's all about keeping that kind of connection together. So that is my kind of most favorite picture, I suppose. We'll just quickly, briefly, before we stop, talk about this idea of street photography and wedding photography and how they can come together, correlation between the two of them. Martin Parr, who's another Magnum photographer, UK photographer, he insists that you should be making statements about society. And he says, be obsessive. So I have this ongoing project that is basically older people, from a street photography point of view, older people that are still in the throes of love, if you like. So I'm often running around different places. If I see people, I'm careful of what I say with older people, but people who are older than me, let's just say that, who are still in love, and I'll try my best to go and get some street photos of them if I can. So we're talking about being obsessive at this point in the correlation. So this image here, I so wanted to get the picture of the bride and her dad coming to the church. The church is on the left. They've just got out of the car, arriving at the wedding on the right-hand side. I didn't want to have the car in. I wanted this beautiful cottage to be in the frame. And I really was hoping that, unlike that other picture of the bride with the flowers, that she didn't hold the flowers up by her face. And also I was hoping that there was a separation between the bride and her dad, as there is. So I kind of obsessed about hopefully getting this picture, was ready to move if it didn't come together. But then we also have the vicar at the front of the frame, which really adds to it. And again, that's pure luck. I was not counting on that, but it definitely adds to the frame. Okay, thinking outside the box. So this is a shot in Switzerland, I think it was, when I took this picture. Very, very much snapshot. But it's kind of, there's a lady doing a tying a dog up, and then you have this kind of, as they do in Switzerland, they have these cows everywhere, trying to sell you chocolate. And then we talked about that picture as well. So thinking outside the box, don't follow the norms. You can always get more stuff if you don't just conform to what's expected. Looking for the extraordinary in the ordinary. So here I'm at a racing meeting, and see this guy who's basically dressed very smart with a fake horse's head on. So this is the extraordinary in the ordinary. And then here at the wedding, we are in the Savoy in London, which is one of the most kind of expensive places you can get married, and they have these £1 million mirrors and everything. The bride had arranged for the drinks people to be stormtroopers, because the groom was very much into Star Wars. So, obviously I have pictures of them, but I wanted to make a connection between the opulence of the Savoy, and the fact that we have these stormtroopers. So getting this reflection in this like 600-year-old mirror. Now, I'm not a particularly tall person, so it would have been great if I could have been a bit taller and got a little bit more of them in it. But I couldn't, and I certainly wasn't going to stand on 600-year-old furniture to get that picture. And as we say, getting close. So here we are. This is in New York. Metered for that light, waited for the gentleman to come towards me. Very much a waiting game when it's street photography. Wait for them to get close, take the picture. And then, as we said, we saw this one earlier as well, getting in nice and close to give context to the frame. Exaggerate the scene. Again, something else that Martin Parr identifies. So here, this is a shot in New York also. Now, again, this is luck, because I'm interested in the guy with the newspaper. He's about to walk into this pool of light that his hands is in. And that's what I've metered for. That's what I'm waiting for. But being New York, and they're not going to walk around behind me and say, "Oh, excuse me, am I in your way?" They're going to just walk right in front of you. So this person walked into the frame with a mobile phone. So actually, this shot was nothing that I was aiming for, but it worked out really well. So the exaggeration of her in the frame, nice and large, although luck, really makes the picture stronger. And then here again, not a particularly flattering picture, but again, exaggerating that view, giving them some kind of context to it. And then, we'll just do these 3 or 4 pictures here. Documenting families. The same principles apply. So this is my kids in my little cottage. Breakfast time, just watching, waiting, always having a camera at hand. Everywhere is a picture. Doesn't matter what they're doing as they grow up. And even pictures like this, where they cry, there's tears, and it's not a particularly pleasant thing at the time. But again, remember about that nostalgia. We talked about nostalgia a lot, and the power of being able to look at these pictures and remember what it was like. There's nothing untowards in this picture. It was just bedtime, and bedtime, as I said to my son Albie at that time, "Son, you're going to be going to bed every day for the next 90 years, hopefully, maybe even longer. You better get used to it. There's no point crying every single night for 90 years. It all comes together there.